Hello, Squirrel Squad listeners. We're on chapter 18, The Woman Who Did Not Dare. Polly wrote enthusiastically. Ned answered satisfactory, and after much corresponding, talking, and planning, it was decided that Tom should go west. Never mind what the business was, it suffices to say that it was a good beginning for a young man like Tom, who, having been born and bred in the most conservative class of the most conceited city in New England, needed just the healthy, hearty social influences of the West to widen his views and make a man of him. Of course, there was much lamentation among the women, but everyone felt it was the best thing for him. So while they sighed, they sewed, packed visions of a brilliant future away with his new pocket handkerchiefs, and rejoiced that the way was open before him, even in the act of bedewing his boots with tears. Sidney stood by him to the last, like a man and a brother, which expression of Tom's gave Fanny infinite satisfaction, and Will felt entirely consoled for Ned's disappointment at his refusal to go and join him, since Tom was to take the place Ned had kept for him. And here is Polly. The caption reads, Polly writes enthusiastically. Fortunately, everyone was so busy with the necessary preparations that there was no time for romance of any sort, and the four young people worked together as soberly and sensibly as if all sorts of emotions were not bottled up in their respective hearts. But in spite of the silence, the work, and the hurry, I think they came to know one another better in that busy little space of time than in all the years that had gone before, for the best and bravest in each was up and stirring, and the small house was as full of the magnetism of love and friendship, self-sacrifice and enthusiasm, as the world outside was full of spring sunshine and enchantment. Pity that the end should come so soon, but the hour did its work and went its way, leaving a clearer atmosphere behind. Though the young folks did not see it then, for their eyes were dim because of the partings that must be. Tom was off to the west, Polly went home for the summer, Maud was taken to the seaside with Belle, and Fanny left alone to wrestle with housekeeping, in quotation marks, help, and heartache. If it had not been for two things, I fear she never would have stood a summer in town, but Sidney often called till his vacation came, and a voluminous correspondence with Polly beguiled the long days. Tom wrote once a week to his mother, but the letters were short, not very satisfactory, for men never do tell the interesting little things that women best like to hear. Fanny forwarded her bits of news to Polly. Polly sent back all the extracts from Ned's letters concerning Tom, and by putting the two reports together, they gained the comfortable assurance that Tom was well, in good spirits, hard at work, and intent on coming out strong in spite of all the obstacles. Polly had a quiet summer at home, resting and getting ready in mind and body for another winter's work, for in the autumn she tried her plan again, to the satisfaction of her pupils and the great joy of her friends. She never said much of herself in her letters, and Fanny's first exclamation when they met again was an anxious, "Why, Polly, dear, have you been sick and never told me?" "No, I'm only tired. Had a good deal to do lately, and the dull weather makes me just a trifle blue. I shall soon brighten up when I get to my work again," answered Polly, bustling about to put away her things. "You don't look a bit natural. What have you been doing to your precious little self?" persisted Fanny, troubled by the change, yet finding it hard to say wherein it lay. Polly did not look sick, though her cheeks were thinner and her color paler than formerly. but she seemed spiritless, and there was a tired look in her eyes that went to Fanny's heart. "I'm all right enough, as you'll see when I'm in order, but I'm proper glad to find you looking so well and happy. Does all go smoothly, Fan?" asked Polly, beginning to brush her hair industriously. "Answer me one question first," said Polly, looking as if a sudden fear had come over her. "Tell me, truly, have you never repented of your hint to Sidney?" "Never!" cried Polly, throwing back the brown veil behind which she had half hidden her face at first. "On your honor as an honest girl?" "On my honor as anything you please. Why do you suspect me of it?" demanded Polly almost angrily. "Because something is wrong with you. It's no use to deny it, for you've got the look I used to see in that very glass on my own face when I thought he cared for you. Forgive me, Polly, but I can't help saying it, for it's there, and I want to be as true to you as you were to me if I can." Fanny's face was full of agitation, and she spoke fast and frankly, for she was trying to be generous and found it very hard. Polly understood now and put her fear at rest by saying almost passionately, "I tell you, I don't love him. If he was the only man in the world, I wouldn't marry him because I don't want to." The last three words were added in a different tone, for Polly had checked herself. There was a half-frightened look and turned away to hide her face behind her hair again. "Then if it's not him, it's someone else. You've got a secret, Polly, and I should think you might tell it, as you know mine," said Fanny, unable to rest till everything was told, for Polly's manner troubled her. There was no answer to her question, but she was satisfied, and putting her arm round her friend, she said, in her most persuasive tone, "My precious Polly, do I know him?" "You have seen him." "And is he very wise, good, and splendid, dear?" "No." "He ought to be if you love him. I hope he isn't bad," cried Fan, anxiously, still holding Polly, who kept her head obstinately turned. "I'm suited. That's enough. Oh, please just tell me one thing more. Don't he love back again?" "No. Now don't say another word. I can't bear it." And Polly drew herself away as she spoke in a desperate sort of tone. "I won't, but now I'm not afraid to tell you that I think, I hope, I do believe that Sidney cares a little for me. He's been very kind to us all, and lately he has seemed to like to see me always when he comes, and miss me if I'm gone. I didn't dare to hope anything till Papa observed something in his manner and teased me about it. I try not to deceive myself, but it does seem as if there was a chance of happiness for me." "Thank heaven for that!" cried Polly, with the heartiest satisfaction in her voice. "Now come and tell me all about it," she added, sitting down on the couch with the air of one who has escaped a great peril. "I've got some notes and things I want to ask your opinion about, if they really mean anything, you know," said Fanny, getting out a bundle of papers from the inmost recesses of her desk. "There's a photograph of Tom. Came in his last letter. Good, isn't it? He looks older, but that's the beard and the rough coat, I suppose. Dear old fellow, he's doing so well. I really begin to feel quite proud of him." Fan tossed the photograph and went on rummaging for a certain note. She did not see Polly catch up the picture and look at it with hungry eyes, but she did hear something in the low tone in which Polly said, "It don't do him justice." And glancing over her shoulder, Fan's quick eye caught a glimpse of the truth. Though Polly was half turned away from her, without stopping to think, Fan dropped her letters, took Polly by the shoulders, and cried in a tone full of astonishment, "Polly, is it Tom?" Poor Polly was so taken by surprise that she had not a word to say. None were needed. Her telltale face answered for her. as well as the impulse which made her hide her head in the sofa cushion like a foolish ostrich when the hunters are after it. "Oh, Polly, I'm so glad. I never thought of it. You're so good, and he's such a wild boy. I can't believe it, but it's so dear of you to care for him." "Couldn't help it. Tried not to, but it was so hard, Fan, said a stifled voice from the depths of the very fuzzy cushion which Tom had once condemned. And there's a picture. Polly with her head in the cushion and Fan next to her. Yay, secret's out. The last words in the appealing hand outstretched to her told Fanny the secret of her friend's tender sympathy for her own love troubles, and seemed so pathetic that she took Polly in her arms and cried over her in the fond, foolish way girls have of doing when their hearts are full, and tears can say more than tongues. The silence never lasts long, however, for the feminine desire to talk it over usually gets the better of the deepest emotion. So presently the girls were hard at it, Polly very humble and downcast, Fanny excited and overflowing with curiosity and delight. "Really, my sister, you dear thing, how heavenly that will be," she cried. "It never will be," answered Polly in a tone of calm despair. "What will prevent it?" "Maria Bailey," was the tragic reply. "What do you mean? Is she the Western girl? She shan't have Tom. I'll kill her first." Too late, let me tell you, is that door shut and mild safe? Fanny recoiled. I'm sure I said that wrong. And returning, listened breathlessly while Polly poured into her ear the bitter secret which was preying on her soul. "Hasn't he mentioned Maria in his letters to you? Once or twice, but sort of jokingly, and I thought it was only some little flirtation. He can't have time for much of that fun, he's so busy. Ned writes good gossipy letters. I taught him how, and he tells me all what's going on when he'd spoken to this girl several times. They bored with her mother, I asked about her quite carelessly, and he told me she was pretty, good, and well educated, and he thought Tom was rather smitten. That was a blow, for you see, Fan, since Trix broke the engagement, and it wasn't wrong to think of Tom, I let myself hope just a little, and was so happy. And now I must give it up. Now I see how much I hoped, and what a dreadful loss it's going to be." 2 great tears rolled down Polly's cheeks, and Fanny wiped them away, feeling an intense desire to go west by the next train, whither Maria Bailey with a single look, wither her with a single look, and bring Tom back as a gift to Polly. "It was so stupid of me not to guess before, but you see, Tom always seemed so like a boy, and you are more womanly for your age than any girl I know, so I never thought of you caring for him in that way. I knew you were very good to him. You are to everyone, my precious, and I knew that he was fond of you as he's fond of me, fonder, if anything, because he thinks you're perfect, but still, I never dreamed of his loving you as more than a dear friend." "He doesn't," sighed Polly. "Well, he ought, and if I could get hold of him, he should." Polly clutched Fan at that and held her tight, saying sternly, "If you ever breathe a word, drop a hint, look a look that will tell him or anyone else about me, yes, as sure as my name is Mary Milton, I'll proclaim from the housetops that you are—" Polly got no further, for Fan's hand was on her mouth, and Fan's alarmed voice vehemently protested. "I won't. I promise solemnly I'll never say a word to a mortal creature. Don't be so fierce, Polly. You quite frighten me." Well, it's bad enough to love someone who doesn't love you, but to have them told of it is perfectly awful. It makes me wild just to think of it. Oh, Fan, I'm getting so ill-tempered and envious and wicked. I don't know what will happen to me. I'm not afraid for you, my dear, and I do believe things will go right because you are so good to everyone. How Tom could help adoring you, I don't see. I know he would if he stayed at home longer after he got rid of Trix. It would be the making of him, but though he's my brother, I don't think he's good enough for you, Polly. And I don't quite see how you can care for him so much when you might have had a person so infinitely superior. I don't want a superior person. He'd tire me as if he was A.S. Besides, I do think Tom is superior to him in many things. Well, you needn't stare. I know he is or will be. He's so different, very young and has lots of faults, I know. But I like him all the better for it, and he's honest and brave and has a big warm heart. And I'd rather have him care for me than the wisest, best, most accomplished man in the world, simply because I love him. If Tom could only have seen Polly's face when she said that, it was so tender, earnest, and defiant that Fanny forgot the defense of her own lover in admiration of Polly's loyalty to hers, for this faithful, all-absorbing love was a new revelation to Fanny, who was used to hearing her friends boast of 2 or 3 lovers a year, and calculate their respective values with almost as much coolness as the young men discussed the fortunes of the girls they wished for, but could not afford to marry. She had thought her love for Sidney very romantic because she did not really care whether he was rich or poor, though she never dared to say so even to Polly for fear of being laughed at. She could and feel the sentiment which she could not conquer was a treasure to be accepted with reverence and cherished with devotion. I don't know when I began to love Tom, but I found out that I did last winter and was as much surprised as you are, continued Polly, as if glad to unburden her heart. I didn't approve of him at all. I thought he was extravagant, reckless, and dandified. I was very much disappointed when he chose Trix, and the more I thought and saw of it, the worse I felt for Tom. For Tom was too good for her, and I hated to see her do so little for him when she might have done so much, because he's one of the men who can be led by their affections, and the woman he marries can make or mar him. That's true, cried Fan, as Polly paused to look at the picture, which appeared to regard her with a grave, steady look which seemed rather to belie her assertions. I don't mean that he's weak or bad. If he was, I should hate him, but he does need someone to love him very much and make him happy, as a good woman best knows how, said Polly, as if answering the mute bangings the mute language of Tom's face. Oh my God. I hope Maria Bailey is all he thinks her, she added softly, for I couldn't bear to have him disappointed again. I dare say he don't care a fig for her, and you're only borrowing trouble. What do you say? Ned answered. What do you say? Ned answered when you asked. What do you say Ned answered when you asked about this inconvenient girl? Said Fanny, turning hopeful all at once. Polly repeated it and added, I asked him in another letter if he didn't admire Miss B as much as Tom, and he wrote back that she was a nice girl. But he had no time for nonsense, and I needn't get my white kids ready for some years yet unless to dance at Tom's wedding. Since then he hasn't mentioned Maria, so I was sure there was something serious going on. And being in Tom's confidence, he kept quiet. It does look bad. Suppose I say a word to Tom, just inquire after his heart in a general way, and give him a chance to tell me if there's anything to tell. I'm willing, but you must let me see the letter. I can't trust you not to hint or say too much. You shall. I'll keep my promise in spite of everything, but it'll be hard to see things going wrong when a word would set it right. And I'm going to stop right there. That's 20 minutes and my mouth's getting dry. And of course, I forgot to bring my drink in here. Hope to see you live at 5 today. Tea with me, Granny Dee. Be sweet, don't be ugly. Love ya.